Welcome to the Local Marketing Source Weekly Update, brought to you by localmarketingsource.com.
This week's Local Marketing Update is brought to you by Scott Gallagher. Scott is the co-founder of Local Marketing Source and has become the recognized expert in providing online marketing services to local businesses. Follow Scott on Twitter at ScottGallagher5 and on Facebook.com/Scott P. Gallagher.
Hey, well, good afternoon, everyone. Scott Gallagher here with Local Marketing Source, bringing you our weekly local marketing industry update. Now, next week's LMS member call is going to be Wednesday, May 18th at 4 p.m. Central or 5 p.m. Eastern. Now, this week we've got some fun things to talk about. As a matter of fact, this morning I just got interviewed for a podcast. I'd like you to go check it out by Steve Cypress. It's called the Rhino Daily. It's not internet marketing based, nor is it even marketing based. Steve has got a whole variety of different guests that talk about small business marketing. So whether you are running an agency or you've got a chiropractic office, you could get value from Steve's blog. And he's got some pretty awesome people. Everybody from, Dan Kennedy and Tony Robbins on there. And I had the opportunity, so I felt a little bit honored today to talk with Steve, and we had a lot of fun. So in a couple of weeks, I'll be sharing you that link, and it's definitely fired me up today. But I got even more fired up today when a colleague of mine comes in and says, all right, we broke our record, and he had 5 back-to-back sales meetings over a 2-hour period. So I want to share a little bit about that today and how awesome old school is. I think there's no better way of saying it than that. We want to talk about the Google, right? The Google updating the Google My Business API, the GMB API. So what does that mean, and how is that going to affect marketers? Google Search Console is also getting some updates. The search analytic reports and the knowledge graph and local and rich snippets are being updated. Other than that, there wasn't a heck of a lot that went on in the local marketing world, but something happened in the marketing world today that is near and dear to my heart. It's 2 passions of mine that have come together that I thought I would talk to you about this today and share some thoughts. And that's Budweiser renaming their beer to America. So I've got a couple of things that I want to share, and I'm going to make a prediction and put it out there on record. You guys know I like to make predictions and see how they come to fruition in a year or 2 from now. Back to old school, I say that. I've been selling this service for 11 years now. And I started my sales career about 22 years ago. And back then, 22 years ago, what we would call cold calling. And we'd be given a territory. And I was selling internet connections to businesses and only to businesses. And the cheapest internet connection we sold was $1,500 a month. And it was a 1.5 megabit connection from a T1. Well, most of my internet at home is 20 megs. So it's, this was a $1,500 internet connection that is 1/10. Oh God, I'm going to sneeze there. 1/10 of the speed that I get even at home, not to mention the business connection I have at the office is much more. And we'd be given a territory, and you'd have to go and canvass that territory. You'd find your business parks, and you would go and door knock on every single business that could use your services. I'll tell you a quick little story that most of you may not even know. When I first started out, I got down there cold calling, and I got to this big building. It was 88 floors in Toronto. It was on Bay Street. That's the Wall Street of Toronto. And my first day of cold calling on my own, I got 8 cards. And I called my dad up that night. He's like, man, dude, that's not enough. You got to just get the cards. Get the cards. The next day, I got 44. Well, fast forward a few years, and I was working for a different firm. I actually got hired by this different firm because they liked my sale process. He liked what I did as a salesman and hired me, stole me. I ended up being his best salesman, his number 9 employee. Now they've got over 80 employees, and to this day we're friends. But I was cold calling one day. I walk into this office and there's 4 guys sitting around this circle in this relatively small office, and big black guy that was sitting there, and the lights were off and he had his headphones on, and I look around and I'm like, I'm intimidated, and I walked out. A couple of Russians there, and and I was like going down the stairs, and my dad popped into my head and he says, get the card, get the card, get the card. So what did I do? I turned around and I charged like a rhino. I went back into that office. I tapped the guy on the shoulder. He turned around and I said, I'm just here to get the business card, the contact information, blah, 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 with my script. Boom, got the card. Went back to the office. We did what we do. We followed up with our phone calls and we booked initial meetings. We called them IMs, and you'd have to book so many IMs in a week and see so many people, and it was just a numbers game. And that was the process. Long story short, I ended up working for that company for several years, became their top sales rep, and a company that I ended up selling to was this different sale process with this business, selling to the United States, and I sold a company in Chicago. Well, fell in love with the person I sold software to and ended up marrying that person and becoming a father. And so that's why I'm in the United States. But it always goes back in my head. My life changed when I turned around on those stairs and I chose to do what I was supposed to do. And that was to get off my ass and get out there and book some initial meetings. My life changed forever. So this guy comes back today and says he got 5. For your business, you've got to have 3 initial meetings for every sale. That's average business to business sales. 22 years ago when I started this, the game hasn't changed. What has changed is the world of internet marketing and selling these services. When I started this business 11 years ago, I would get the deer in headlight look when I was trying to sell the service. I'd even educate that, people were going to possibly be looking for your business on the internet. I had so many people saying, they're never going to be looking for me on the internet. Well, 11 years later, Yellow Pages practically ceases to exist these days. And our competition is a lot bigger, a lot more competition than it ever was. You've got the $100 a month services. You've got the niche-based services. You've got the Yelps of the world, the newspapers, the Comcasts. They're all trying to sell a service that consumers, that buyers believe, I pay somebody money and they're going to get me number 1 in Google. By being number 1 in Google, I'm going to get more business. And everybody's making these promises when really nobody can make that promise. Nobody knows the Google algorithm except for some key people at Google. So nobody knows the real secret on how to do it. We at Local Marketing Source, we've got our philosophies. There's a lot of philosophies that are out there, but we're artists. We're not scientists here. We don't game the algorithm and try to understand all the little tweaks and measurements because it changes. It's a cat and mouse game. Google does not want to be manipulated. So anytime that they feel like that they're manipulated, they're enhancing their algorithm. But getting back to sales, that's what makes us different. Not to mention how much of this solicitation, guys, I tried it for some time with my agency. I spent a lot of money and whatnot, learning everything that I learned at Local Marketing Source. I sold over 1,000 people services through Local Marketing Source. I've got over 10,000 students that have engaged in some type of education. We've gone through, over 30,000 on our email list. All of that's built in an electronic front of getting a message that's out there, but that business has changed as well. But nonetheless, it's tough to build an internet marketing agency through all these online channels, which is the easiest. And those cost a lot of money, and they cost a lot of time to set up. We want to set up a webinar. It takes me a day to do, or it will take somebody else almost 2 days. Why? Because 1, you need a landing page. Well, I've got my templates, all right, and it's integrated. So my landing page is integrated with, oh gosh, what am I thinking here? Of course, Your landing page has a YouTube video on it, so you got to create the video, shoot the video, and put it up there, unless you have a timeless video. But you want to make an event video, a 2-minute type of landing page video. We've got integration that goes directly to GoToWebinar that has a PHP file that pushes the information to the GoToWebinar, so that's got to be set up for the engagement. You got to have, in GoToWebinar, you got to have the autoresponder emails for the event reminder, not the promotion of it. Reminder goes out 1 day before, 1 hour before. You've got call to action links on there. You create links for setting up the calendar links, because you got to try to drive as much as you can there. Then you have the follow-up emails after the webinar that are created with for those that attended, and a follow-up email for those that don't attend. Well, then you've also got the integration that we create into Infusionsoft for an email autoresponder. We create 4, 5, 6 emails to promote to the list that have the call to actions that drive it to the landing page. And that takes time to set up, and that's all, those 3 pieces all work together. Not to mention the actual webinar itself. Now, I've done a lot of webinars, so it's easy for me to put something together, get it out there. I've got different topics that I can throw together, put out there. But most of you don't. And, all of that stuff takes time and money to set up. Then you've got to drive traffic. Where does the traffic come from? Well, if you're setting up a Facebook campaign, you've got, your ads, your ad sets, your campaigns that you've got to go and create. You've got to, with your ad, there's the graphic that goes along with it. There's the copy that goes along with it. It drives to the landing page, and whew, that's a big deal. There's a lot of work in that, all to get an initial meeting on the telephone. Once you get people electronically, what are the conversion rates of a telephone initial meeting versus a face-to-face initial meeting? This goes all the way back to the 3 ways to influence human behavior. And face-to-face has got a 55% weight more than any other. So in other words, you've pretty much got a 50% greater chance of, or no, it would be the inverse of that. It would be a 200%, your 200% greater chance of closing a deal in a face-to-face meeting than you would in a telephone meeting. So you've got to have 4 times the amount of telephone meetings to really kind of hit the same results as face-to-face. And in 1 day of creating customized videos for an audience, doing research and identifying that, mapping it out, and then 1 day going to these offices and handing it out, not even 1 day, 1 hour drive each way, and then 2 hours of work, gets you 5 initial meetings. How's that? 2 days worth of work to bring in $6,000 plus? 2 days worth of work, $6,000 plus. So, guys, there's certain things that are never going to change in our lifetime. And that's, business is about relationships. And real relationships are built and formed when you're belly to belly. It's a lot more difficult to build and form relationships through a telephone or through electronic means. So you really want build your business, get back to old school. That's how I built my business initially. And that's how I'm continuing to focus my company. I jumped off that bandwagon for, like I said, a few years. And that's a business mistake that's going to go down in my history. But all the electronic means are merely there to support your marketing efforts, not your sales efforts. All right, so let's get into Google updating the GMB API. This is the Google My Business application program interface. If you don't know what an API is, it's just a means. This is for a lot bigger accounts. This is not really what a lot of us are going to be utilizing, but there is some value into that because it creates opportunity for creating apps, let's say. And I can create I can call it a wrap app for chiropractors, a review acquisition program app that runs on a smartphone, and making it work with Google's API will give me the ability to read and respond to reviews and the ability to add rich attributes to particular listings. So there would be some value for small business owners. I think you're probably going to see some of these apps come out. If you're a developer of apps, think about that. I think I just gave you a good idea. And software applications, we're seeing some of this right now already. Next is the Google Search Console. Now, this is different than the Google My Business. This is their Google Search Console has updated the search analytics report, and they've added the knowledge graph and local and rich snippets to the Google Search Console. So what this means is it will give us click-through data on Google My Business for a variety of different data anomalies. This is coming from what Google says. They said, we refined our standards for calculating clicks and impressions. As a result, you may see a change in the click, impression, and CTR values in the search analytic reports. A significant part of this change will affect the website properties with associated mobile app properties. Now, more specifically, it involves accounting for clicks and impressions only to the associated application property rather than the website. So it sounds like that they've separated Webmaster Tools and the data for that for your website and analytics and, showing their specific properties, marketing properties, or as we call it, marketing assets. Woo! I'm flying through some stuff today, but I'm having some fun. And lastly, before we get through this podcast today, I know this had nothing to do with any local marketing or SEO or anything of that nature. And it has nothing to do with anybody else that's on the line other than the fact if you're in America. But there's some marketing lessons that I want to teach. And Budweiser has just renamed their beer to Budweiser Beer to America. And, the first thing I saw that I thought was a joke. I really did. And, it's not April Fool's. I checked out different sources and it's legit. And I'm kind of surprised by it. The first thing it reminded me of was New Coke. If anybody is old enough to remember back in the 80s what Coca-Cola did by bringing out New Coke. And that went down as, likely the biggest marketing blunder in history. I'm literally scratching my head with what, Budweiser is doing here. Now, there's a craft beer, there's like 4,400 beer companies in the United States, and I think 85% of the market share is shared by the top three or somewhere around there, and then, then you get all these microbreweries. And so a company that's got a micro market share has got a product. It's a nice IPA called Murica, Murika, and they named it that, saying this is, I remember growing up as a Canadian, and I just got into a debate with my cousin about this, and Canadians laugh at Americans because they say that American beer is like drinking water. And, Budweiser was 4.2% ABW, that's, alcohol volume per weight. And Canadian beers were a 5%, which was an ABV, which is alcohol volume or alcohol percentage per volume, not weight. And when you look, it was a misleading thing. So it appeared that American beer had less alcohol content in it, when in reality, they had the identical alcohol content. It was just the two countries measured, what is alcohol percentage. One was by weight, one was by volume. And because alcohol is lighter than water, it makes a difference in the variance. And so I laughed at that. But, in the last 10, 15 years, all these microbreweries have popped up, and they've really taken a storm, and they're taking a foothold in the marketplace, in the beer marketplace, of being good American beer. Well, that's hurting the major brands, and they're starting to lose market share. Their market share is being chipped away at very slowly, but year after year for the last 10 years, it's a little bit more of a chip away in the market share. And so inevitably they've got to reinvent themselves. It's a lot kind of like McDonald's, you know, how they've gone through and now they're actually gone all the way back where their menu is such simplified, but before it was just hamburgers and French fries. I mean, they've sold everything there at different points of time. So where am I going with all this? In my opinion, this is going to turn out to be like the new Coke. 30 years later, another major corporation. I don't know. Budweiser has brand recognition in a big way. They've been on, they've gone down in history as one of the best Super Bowl commercials in history. You know, the frogs that are sitting on the little lily pads. But why? But what? You know, if anybody remembers that commercial, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And the value of that brand is immense. And now they're having to rebrand it. And the only nostalgic thing that they're bringing over to the new can, well, is the colors and the fonts, but as a little bow. And I'll tell you, I think they would have been better off by having maintaining their Budweiser beer and slightly tweaking the formula to have a slightly different taste to it and having a side product called America beer. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm going to be talking about, you know, that they've really screwed up or they've been very good with this change. Who knows? We're not too sure. But in any event, that comes to the conclusion of this week's update. And I will take 30 seconds and come back and answer any questions that you may have. Well, thanks for watching the Local Marketing Industry Update. We've got these things coming out every single week. So if you liked with what you heard, just click the button right above me right here to subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to get a little bit more, right over here, go check out localmarketingsource.com. We've got free reports that you can grab. You can even register for our free marketing course to get in and see the portal. Or just go ahead and follow us on some of the social channels. We'll be around. Until next time.